Come on in, sit right down. Keep your hands up and keep your chin down. Shut the door. Time to go with Randy Harris and Knockout Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, Knockout Radio with Randy Harris is about to start. So get ready for the best MMA talk, games, interviews, prizes, and surprises anywhere. For Knockout Radio, I'm the voice, Ray Flores, and you can follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/Ray Flores MMA, or facebook.com/Ray Flores MMA. And now, here's Knockout
Hey-o.
Radio.
Hey, everybody.
You know, this is a first. Actually, it's about the first in a couple weeks. On time.
6:01.
6:01.
And we are on
Wednesday
air.
night. Mother grabbing Knockout Radio.
How about that?
You know what happens? You know,
Yeah,
Wegs, you're on the board,
We get Randy out of here.
and things start running properly.
What?
You know,
The hell?
it's not a coincidence. It is not a coincidence. Welcome everybody. Wednesday night. You like that, Frank? Huh?
It's pretty good.
I know it's not a coincidence that when Randy takes off and officially takes off, because he's usually mailing it in anyway. When he officially isn't here, physically, Wegs on the board, it runs smoothly. So welcome everybody. Wednesday night, 6:02. We're up and running. Knockout Radio. If you're listening on Radio IO, you're listening on MMA Weekly, you're listening on KnockoutRadio.com. However you're listening to us, welcome. I'm going to put the number out there right away, 855-483-6646, 855-483-6646. I'm Derek Kukulich, in for the Harris clan, I guess. Both Sean, Randy are kicking their feet up, having a little vacay.
Yeah, they went to a family reunion or something like that.
God, you imagine a Harris family reunion? Who's paying for food? Nobody. Nobody. They're all looking around. The check comes. Everyone's hands in their pockets. Everyone's ducking out. There's a race to valet. Try to get out of there before the bill comes.
You know what, though? I will say I have spent some time at Harris parties.
Oh, yeah?
They're fun. They do know how to have a good time. So
on someone else's dime? It has to be sponsored, right?
No comment.
Gift bags of free T-shirts and whatnot. So we got a lot to get to this week on Knockout Radio. Again, the number 855-483-6646. I want to go back real quick to last week before we jump into, obviously, a ton of news. Now, Wegs, you brought up something last week, and I don't think it got enough attention, and I went back and I did a little research on this. Nick Newell is the
right.
I guess we call him the one-arm fighter?
The one-handed man.
The one-handed fighter, formerly of XFC, now fighting the World Series of Fighting. Weg said last week that actually that might prove to be an advantage.
I did.
You said this last week. I went back and I did some research. I scoured the tapes of our shows. That was officially the dumbest thing you ever said on the air.
All right.
The one-hand, one-arm fighter was actually at an advantage. And I don't know if it got enough time last week.
Okay.
But
all right.
I just wanted to point out that I did look, and I think that was the dumbest thing you ever said.
Well, thank you. I do want to clarify.
Please, here's your chance.
One little thing.
Yeah, here's your chance.
I believe what I said was it could be used as an advantage. Now, he was born that way, so he didn't have the advantage of having all four of his
You're not
full
appendages.
appendages.
Yeah,
it could be, and I do stand by that.
You do, huh?
I honestly do.
All right.
Do still believe that,
Well,
and obviously we know your take on it, so I won't talk about it with you anymore.
Well,
but
if
anybody else would like to chime in and give me shit, please feel free.
Well, I appreciate. I like that you dig in on your opinions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate that. We can now move forward to the rest of the show. A lot of stuff to talk about. Obviously, the big news really announced yesterday was the Bellator signing.
Certainly.
Bellator making news again, and I guess it's not a Bellator signing. I guess it's a Viacom signing?
It's overall, yeah, because
right?
it's TNA as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's with Spike.
And it's with Spike TV. It's Rampage Jackson made it official that he's signing. He's going to be fighting with Bellator. He's going to be doing something, performing, I guess we'll call it, in TNA nonstop action wrestling. And he's also somehow involved with Spike TV. Whether it's,
I don't know, is it going to be his own reality show?
Well,
or some sort of show?
They said that there's going to be a four part show on him specifically. They did something similar with King Mo. I don't think it was 4 parts. I think it was 2 parts. Kind of a behind the scenes, all access type thing. Interesting to say the least. I mean, I've made my opinion known about what I think of Rampage. I think his act is tired. I can't remember the last time he performed up to Rampage Jackson levels.
That's a good point.
In the octagon. But we're gonna have Jason Floyd on, who is Mr. Bellator. Has his own podcast, has his own website. We're gonna have him on. He was on the call today with the conference call with Bjorn, with Dixie Carter of TNA, with Rampage. So we're going to have him on at about 6:15, and then we're open phone lines tonight. So again, 855-483-6646. If you do have thoughts on Rampage and what this means, definitely give us a call, give us a shout, because I just don't get it. I don't think it falls within the Bellator structure. I just don't feel like it just seems very outside of what's brought them to this point.
True. And I also feel that when it comes down to what people want to see, I mean, even Rampage, I mean, you said you don't remember the last time you saw Rampage perform to Rampage standards. And even he was saying, as he was licking his wounds from the Glover Teixeira fight, he was pretty much saying, I'll be the guy you want to come in and have a good show, but he didn't, to me, sound very committed to anything all that. It's not like he was going to try to go for any belts or really try to perform, and he's just going to be the call guy.
But he said that, but even when you look at his performances in the past, and if you pull up his past card and his past opponents and everything, he's not I've also made my feelings known about Vanderlei Silva and how I think, maybe it's time for him to hang it up. He's not that type of fighter. He's not a lay it on the line, I'm going to, nuts and guts, come out swinging. He's a guy who, in losses that he had, I mean, in particular, I'm thinking of the Bader fight. He throws one overhand right. And if he's not really feeling it that night, and if it's not getting through, he mails it in. He's not looking for other ways to win. He's not saying,
he's a one-trick pony.
He's a one-trick pony who doesn't, I don't even think, like doing his trick that much. Hopefully it worked once. Otherwise, I'm just going to dance around, and he's coming overweight. He's coming out of shape. So a lot to talk about with Rampage Jackson. I'm sure that a lot of this show is going to be dedicated to that. And, just the fact that we're doing this and we're talking about him again and talking about this deal, is that enough for Bellator? Is that enough for Spike TV? Is that enough for TNA? What are they expecting out of it? So we'll talk to Jason Floyd of the MMA Report coming up in about 10 minutes, I believe. He's going to be giving us a shout. Also, a lot of breaking news last night on the UFC show. They brought up BJ Penn again. They brought up BJ Penn's name again, and talking about that he might be training for a return to lightweight. And I don't
hang him up, BJ. Give it a rest.
We'll get into BJ Penn. Also, Michael Bisping can't stay out of the headlines. Whether guys are calling him out or something he's doing. He had a recent surgery, and he finally He finally said an opponent's name that he might be interested in. So we'll get into that probably in hour number 2. Also, we finally have a date for Benson Henderson and TJ Grant. They're going to be hooking that up pretty soon. TJ Grant, obviously, we had on last week. He called in, spent some time with us on Knockout Radio and MMA Weekly and Radio IO. Good dude, real humble guy, and he was talking to us over a nice plate of sushi. He's telling us he's good to go. He wants to fire this up, and he gets his wish. August 31st in Milwaukee, he's going to get his title shot against Benson Henderson at 160, UFC 164. And also, what's his show without talking about, Chael Sonnen. He's back in the news. Announced last night. He's been calling out Vanderlei. He wanted the axe murderer. There was an opening on this Winnipeg card. Shogun didn't have a dance partner with Nog bailing out, and it looks like it's going to be Sonnen against Shogun, but they're not going to do it at Winnipeg. They're going to be doing it on the Fox Sports 1 card in Boston.
I like that. I really like that. I mean, you have Chael, obviously the master of talking up a fight, but he's also a master of getting fights. He says the word, and it's almost like, boom, done. It's going to happen. It sucks. Well, I don't know. I don't really care, honestly, if it's in Winnipeg or in Boston. But I
Those
think
Winnipeg people can't win. Their last card was a stinker. I mean, and all of a sudden these injuries start lining up on their card. They just got to get through this card.
Yeah, but it's good that they're. I think it's good at least. I think Chael is an exciting enough guy, personality. His fights have been a little bit lackluster of late.
Have they?
Yeah, I think.
You
so.
mean his personal performance or the fight?
Yeah. His personal performance.
Okay.
Yeah. Now he's also been going against Anderson Silva and John Bones Jones. So
you're talking.
So that's tough to go up against. Now he's going up against Shogun.
I mean, either one has it. Yeah, either one guy's on the number 1 in pound for pound, and the other guy's number 2, or vice versa.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking his last 3 fights. Anderson Silva. Right. Actually, I take that back because he had Brian Stan, I believe, in between.
Yes.
Silva
fights.
Right, in between Silva fights. But yeah, his losses that haven't looked good. I mean, he's been made to look bad against the 2 best fighters in the world. Is this the biggest? And this what I was thinking about. He's fighting Anderson Silva, and he brought a ton of hype into that fight. He was the seller. Yeah. He beats Stan. He gets on the mic and cuts a promo on Anderson, who's sitting ringside. It doesn't stop for however many months that fight buildup was. Is this spotlight on this fight coming up with Shogun, is this the biggest spotlight that he's performed under? Bigger than the Anderson?
I don't think so. I don't think it.
Is it because the opponent, or do you think?
Yes.
Because I'm thinking with Fox backing this thing, this isn't a pay-per-view fight. So you're not getting, you don't have to convince people to put down, $60 to watch this. This is a free TV deal. This is their launch. You're going to see Chael Sonnen everywhere, all over the place.
Terry in Cape Coral is going to be thrilled.
Terry in Cape Coral might just want to keep his TV off. But I'm just thinking that, this is the biggest spotlight for an MMA fight, period.
Ever. Any fight.
Yeah. I thought the Kane Junior Dos Santos fight on Fox, their first one, was the biggest spotlight. I think this one tops it.
Because this is the launch of Fox Sports 1?
This is it's not just the launch of MMA on Fox, which was Dos Santos versus Kane, which was big. I don't want it down. It was huge. Absolutely. I mean, a really big step. This is the launch. You're talking the launch of a network of hours of programming. This is where everything's going on this station, on this channel. This is the biggest spotlight, period. And they're putting their eggs in the Chael Sonnen basket to talk it up. And quite frankly, I don't see a better person you could put in there. I really don't. I mean, some people might say like a George St. Pierre or, even a John Jones because of his talent of his toe. This is the guy you want out in front of everything, because when the cameras turn on, when the microphones are put down, that he's going to sell the shit out of this thing.
That's true. That's true.
And he has his the gimmick down. And I was a little. I mean, Shogun isn't the guy who he wanted. Obviously, he wanted, like I said, he wanted Vanderlei. So, and in his comments that I've read, it's I do respect Shogun, and he's very, as crazy as Chael is, he is respectful to guys, and he doesn't call out people. He truly doesn't believe it. But I find it funny that he was saying, Shogun, Vanderlei did this to you. He's still poking at Vanderlei. Through Shogun.
Well, I think he's looking forward to the next fight too, because I think he's still going to want to fight Silva after the Hua fight, win, lose, or draw.
Oh yeah,
and I think that is win, lose, or draw. That is a fight that can be made without much convincing done to Dana or Lorenzo.
And I want to hear what people out there think listening in on Radio IO, MMA Weekly, or KnockoutRadio.com, 855-483-6646. Does this main event, the Sonnen Shogun Rua main event headlining Fox Sports 1 card on Boston, does that fight, is that main event for you? Are you good with the card now? Because a lot of people were saying, well, where's this card going? What is the main event for this thing? Because you have Alistair Overeem fighting Travis Brown. They added Uriah Faber on the card. He's a big name. Matt Brown's fighting Thiago Alves. There are some good fights. Uriah Hall.
Certainly.
They put Uriah Hall. The prospect who everyone thought was going to run through the Ultimate Fighter and stumbled. He's going to have his. I guess you would call it debut fight. His first fight outside of the Ultimate Fighter walls.
Yeah, it's his debut.
Will be on here. Michael McDonald, Brad Pickett, Mike Brown's fighting on this card. There are some, this is a pretty stacked card that they're lining up. And again, this is a launch of a network, not just, we're in partners with Fuel or whatever. This is going to be their home. So when I heard that fight, I wonder how much they just kind of stumbled into it, because obviously you needed Shogun, his dance partner, to fall out for the Winnipeg show.
Certainly.
In my mind, I always want to know, well, what were you lining up for that main event? Because this obviously wasn't it.
No, absolutely not. So it sort of has been very fortuitous how all this has sort of happened. A little bit more so than the Ronda Rousey, Miesha Tate announcement stuff. I think you can be a little bit more conspiratorial when you're thinking about that. This actually a lot of things had to happen before this happened, and it worked out in the end for the UFC. But for the moment, let's put that on hold, because we have Jason on the line to talk about Bellator and their recent signing of Quinton Rampage Jackson. Jason, how are you doing today?
Jason, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, man. Doing pretty good. How y'all doing?
Awesome. We're doing great. We brought up a little what why you're here, why we have you on. We have Jason Floyd with the MMA Report. If you don't follow Jason on Twitter, real quick at the top right now, Jason, what's the Twitter where we can follow you at?
You can simply follow me at Jason_Floyd, JSON_FLOYD, and you can get all my stories right there. That's the way to find it.
Awesome. And Jason, if you don't follow him, if you don't listen, if you need the voice, if you want to know what's going on in Bellator, Jason Floyd has it on lock. That's why I wanted to get him on today. Jason, you were on the call with, actually, I'm going to just start here. You get the press release, you get the information that Bellator, Viacom, TNA, however you want to describe it, has signed Rampage Jackson. What were your thoughts?
Well, I knew that this was something that was coming. When Ariel Helwani, and give credit to him for breaking the news, I knew probably about 2 days before that there was dialogue between the two sides. I didn't realize that they were as close to a deal as they were, but I think the signing makes sense from Bellator in a long-term aspect. From a fighting-wise, look, Rampage is not the guy that he was 5 years ago. I mean, he hasn't had a knockout or a submission since 2008 when he defeated Vanderlei. But there's a lot of people out there, and Derek, I'm sure you know somebody that they don't follow MMA on a day-to-day basis. They're not the quote-unquote hardcore fans, but they probably know who Rampage Jackson is, and they probably think Rampage Jackson is still one of the best fighters in the world, and whenever he makes his debut on Bellator, they're probably going to tune in, and they may never watch Bellator.
Now, to that point, I understand, and I kind of said this to Wegs as we open the show, the fact that we are talking about this, and obviously the MMA world is talking about this, is that enough? In your opinion, is that enough that buzz was created for Bellator, for TNA, for Viacom? Is that enough, or does Rampage have to, actually perform? Because, like you said, people will tune in. I'm going to tune in. I'm not a Rampage Jackson fan. I always bring up when we talk that, when was the last time Rampage Jackson showed up? I'm going to tune in. Now, to those casual fans who tune in because they've heard Rampage or whatever, what happens if he goes out and he gets laid out?
Oh, it's not a good thing for Bellator. And Rampage admitted today on the conference call that he knows that most likely, he's not going to go undefeated in Bellator. How many times he fights there? I guess the question I have is, Rampage is loving Bellator right now, but will he love Bellator in 6 months from now? And I just don't think the tournament aspect fits him very well. But and I know a lot of people don't think Bellator is going to do a pay-per-view. I think a pay-per-view is coming a lot sooner than anyone thinks. And if you look at the matchups that Bellator potentially has of pay-per-view quality fights, King Mo against Rampage Jackson is one of those fights.
When they were on the call today, did they talk about a path for him? Have they set, we're looking for him to do the tournament? I know when they brought Paul Daly over, when he actually did fight for him, his first fight in was just a one-off. It wasn't in the tournament. Did they talk about a kind of future for him?
There really wasn't a lot about the future because Rampage is still recovering from his knee injury, and Rampage is not, he's not holding out saying that, he could fight in the fall, which that season begins in September. I think that's probably 50-50 at this choice, but I think worst-case scenario, you see Rampage in the cage by 2014.
We have Jason Floyd with us from the MMA Report. Follow him on Twitter at Jason_Floyd. So this 2014 you're talking, I mean, that's still a long time away. Until he steps in with Bellator, what are they going to do with him?
Well, you're going to see him on TNA on Thursday night. There's talk of, there's going to be a reality show. It's going to be a 4-part series with him leading up to his Bellator debut. Also part of this deal is him to get back into the movies. That's one of the things that he really wanted to get into doing, and this is going to open that avenue up for him. My guess would be, I think that what happens with King Mo in the Summer Series plays a lot into this. Also, Rampage on the call talked about going up to heavyweight, and being in heavyweight may be a better solution for Rampage in the tournament aspect because he wouldn't have to worry about trying to cut weight and always being at 205.
Now, with everything that's going on, I mean, so far we have movies, we have TV, we have TNA, we have MMA. With all these different things that have been going on and considering Rampage's recent performances, does Bellator not think, and Viacom as a whole, not think that he's going to burn out and they're not going to get their money's worth out of him in the long run?
Oh, I think they're very aware of that issue, but I think this is Bellator's taking a risk. Viacom, they're taking a risk. They are showing that they are becoming a player in the MMA landscape, and I know there's a lot of fans out there that only want the UFC to be the only major show, but that is not Viacom's plan with Bellator. And with all the bad publicity that has been around Bellator over the past couple months with the Eddie Alvarez situation, when you get a fighter like Rampage to come over to Bellator, and if he shows that he's happy 6 months, 12 months from now, you could really start seeing more fighters wanting to come over to Bellator.
Jason, any idea on the numbers on this contract per fight? I know I always feel like it's tied up with Viacom and these other things to help boost the guy's pay. Do we have any idea on numbers on this thing?
Nothing number-wise on it. All you're going to get out of them is a multi-year deal. Typically with Bellator contracts, kind of a 3 to 4 year deal is what it's going to be for him. But from a money-wise aspect, who knows? But obviously they've made him happy. He even mentioned about them buying him a new car. So maybe that was part of the deal as well.
Hey, this is a guy who got, a big monster truck from the UFC. He took some shots, from the quotes that I read, about how he was treated with the UFC. Did you take anything away from that?
Yeah, I actually asked him the question because he was talking about how he fell out of love with MMA and it had to do with the UFC. I asked him, hey, why was that? And he talked about it really started going downhill when he took on the role with A-Team. But then he also said that because of agreements he has with the UFC, he really can't talk about a lot of things about his contracts and what he was not happy with.
We're on the phone with Jason Floyd of the MMA Report. Follow him on Twitter at Jason_Floyd. He said that he couldn't really talk about it, but he did mention the fallout from doing the A-Team movie. Now, to me, that was kind of the point. And not only, obviously, Dana was unhappy and there was some going back and forth about that movie, but to me, that was the downfall of his performance in the ring. That's when, he started ballooning up. That's when he, was missing weight. That's when, to me, as an outside observer, that's when he got away from being Rampage Jackson, the fighter, and performing in the ring. And now his contract, it seems like, is nothing but laced with distractions.
Yeah, you got if you go back to that time when the Rashad Rampage fight was supposed to happen, that was going to be a huge money fight for the UFC. He kind of walks away because that was like his dream role. I think my biggest concern in all of this is he actually getting into a TNA wrestling ring, and is he going to be taking bunks, taking body slams, things like that? Rampage is 34 years old. He's had a history of injuries. That's the aspect that concerns me. Him doing a reality show, movies, I don't think you're worried about it, but I also think you'll see Bellator. You're not going to see them put him up against wrestlers that are going to take him to the ground. They're going to put him up against guys that are going to want to trade with him. And, let's be honest about it. There's going to be a lot of guys in Bellator that are going to be raising their hands saying, hey, I want to fight Rampage Jackson. Look what has happened for Emmanuel Newton over the past 6 months since defeating King Mo.
No, absolutely. And especially with his last performances, you get a name like Rampage on your resume. You don't care where it is, especially if you're fighting in Bellator. That's a good win for you. And I'm glad you brought up the wrestling aspect of it, the pro wrestling aspect of it, I should say. At what point, you cover MMA, you cover Bellator, you talk to these guys. At what point does this become hokey? Now, I'm a huge professional wrestling fan. I'll put that out there. But at what point does guys signing in MMA and kind of showing up in TNA, I get it, one guy, does it. It's kind of a novelty thing. But, is this going to become the norm with them?
I don't think it's the norm. I think it's going to take special guys. And obviously, they did with King Mo. And Derek, you can ask this question. Has King Mo appeared on TNA more than one time?
Maybe twice. It hasn't been anything but a special enforcer type thing where he hasn't, like you say, he hasn't taken a bump, he hasn't taken a body slam, just kind of more of a presence there. But he has talked about the training, and he talked about how much harder that training was than he expected of bumping and things like that. And you bring up Quinton's injury past. I don't see him wanting to go to wherever they're training and take body slams, run the ropes, and do those type of things.
No, I don't see it either. I don't understand that aspect. Rampage has talked in the past about how he grew up as a huge wrestling fan. He really loves the sport. And you do have to wonder that, let's say, I know Al Snow is one of the guys that's really mentored King Mo, who works with TNA. Is he going to be ready to go through an 8-hour session with with Al Snow and all those talent development people at TNA and really go through all the hard work, or is he going to kind of want to sit there, be sitting in California, working out on the beach and doing those things?
Well, that's the other point. We're on with Jason Floyd with the MMA Report. He was on the phone with on the conference call today with Bjorn, with Dixie Carter, with we're only talking about him, Rampage Jackson. You talk about he's going to be in California, wanting to do those other things. That's the other question I have about this deal. It was no secret that, especially towards the end with UFC, but I mean even when he first started, he's not an easy guy to deal with. Media-wise, obviously, I can't get over, the bad jokes that the media laugh at of his and think he's great. But as far as, showing up for an 8-hour session with Al Snow, as far as showing up, he's not an easy guy to deal with. So to me, there's a lot of risk in that side of the deal as well.
Today, I thought we heard a very happy Rampage Jackson. There was really only one time during the conference call when he was taking a question from the media where, a guy was kind of going back on his past and how he hasn't performed well. And Rampage fired back and said, how many fights have you been in? How many times have you stepped into the cage? And let's be honest, I have no idea what it's like to step in that cage and they lock the door. But overall, Rampage seems to be in a very good place. And I think he's a guy that he wants to prove Dana White wrong. He wants to show that he can still be a force in this sport. And, it was very obvious at the end of his UFC run. He wasn't happy, and he was just trying to get out of his deal at that point. And maybe there should have been a point where even, Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta should say, you know what, maybe we just need to release this guy and let him go.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it was. We discussed it on this show before. Was just they're obviously just having him play out the string. He can sell some tickets with his name with those people that you mentioned, Jason, who don't watch every day, don't follow the sport, but they kind of know Rampage, so they were going to pay. A couple more for you, Jason. As far as you've talked to Bjorn a lot, covering the events, the Bellator events, and you've really kind of immersed yourself in the Bellator style and how they run things. How's his attitude with these signings? Because we've talked to him before, we've had him in studio, and to me he's always come off as, he's had a very good game plan that he's stuck to all the way to this point, and it wasn't going out and signing any UFC fall off. It seemed like he loved the tournament format, he loved kind of growing his own talent, so to speak. Do you feel like this is his move, or do you feel like this is Viacom putting pressure on him to say, hey, we need some bigger names. We need better ratings. I know your system has gotten this far, but we need star power.
Well, yeah, I think there's got to be a balance. You got to have guys like Rampage that can come in and get guys in. Outside of the other UFC guys they've signed, none of those guys are going to really move the presses. People don't want to read about Matthew Riddle or Vladimir Mashenko or John Alessio. I was saying this to somebody earlier today. Rampage Jackson is probably the only guy on the Bellator roster that could potentially do an interview on SportsCenter. We know how big that could be if Bellator were to get him on there. But when you talk to Bjorn, this is what we are. We're not going away from it. For people who've been around the sport for a long time, you look at Elite XC, you look at Affliction, and most recently look at Strikeforce. They sign these huge contracts with certain fighters that just cripple their organization. And Bellator has not done that. And the one thing I always say is they've done a great job of finding guys before they can get to the UFC. And that is the key. They went out, they got the Ben Askrens, the Michael Chandlers, the Pat Currans, guys like that, and gave those guys a home. And some of those guys are very appreciative of it, and especially Pat Curran. Pat Curran, to me, seems like the guy that, he's ready to carry the Bellator flag, and he's not the guy that's going to run off to the UFC. Ben Askren and Michael Chandler, I think that when their contracts expire, I think their Bellator days will be over, and they'll go to the UFC.
And we're on the phone with Jason Floyd of the MMA Report. Jason, like I said, you've talked to those guys, and one of those things, like I said, with Bjorn is he has that plan and he's stuck to it, and I always really respected that about him. What do you think the locker room, what do you think the guys who are signed to Bellator contracts are thinking when they see another guy signed to this wrestling TV deal. Is this something that a guy like Pat Curran's going to go to Bjorn and say, hey, what about me? Am I going to get something like this?
Yeah, my understanding is Pat Curran is currently renegotiating his deal at this point. I do know there are some fighters that they've said, hey, I'm not interested in that. I don't want to do the TNA thing. I just want to be an MMA fighter. I'm sure that guys are looking at it as a way to make more money. And, I asked a lot of fighters about Bjorn, what's he like? And, a lot of people say he's a very quiet guy. He's not Dana White. He's not this brash guy. You're not going to see him in a media scrum or a press conference and really come out and say something that is going to create a lot of headlines. I can probably think of less than a handful of times where I've seen Bjorn be that outspoken guy. Now, I'm sure that there's probably a lot of people in Viacom that wish Bjorn was Dana White, but that's just not his personality, and he's not going to change.
Just in a general sense of Bellator, because you've gone to a lot of events, you've covered it. We've obviously watched it on TV. They put on some great shows. How's their attendance? I always wonder about how their live gate is drawing. If you noticed an increase as you've covered last year's series?
Yeah, there were certain venues that did really well. Utah was pretty much a sold-out crowd. When they went to California for the first show, that was actually a show where they ended up adding seats the day of the event because they were sold out. I live here in Tampa just like you guys. They told me that from the event here last year compared to the event here this year, they sold 50% more paid tickets. So obviously people are going. I mean, they're not getting 10, 15,000 people. I mean, you're talking it's anywhere between 2,000 and 4,000 people. And look, and most of the people that are in attendance at Bellator shows, those are hardcore fans. They're not really the quote-unquote casual fans, or they're people that are there to see the preliminary card fighters, which tend to be local fighters.
Last thing for you, Jason, and we'll let you go. Follow Jason at Jason_Floyd. He's with the MMA Report. Brought up, there's always rumors going on. Czech Congo, you think that's a done deal to Bellator? Is it done? Is it just a rumor? What's your take on that?
Sources have told me, and this was prior to today, by the way, and I should note that Bjorn Rebney on the call today did say that he has not signed with Bellator. I reached out to a couple of my sources, and they have told me that basically the report was very premature. Obviously, Bjorn had told me a couple of weeks ago that they were interested in Czech Congo. They like what he could potentially bring. Obviously, the two sides are talking. Czech Congo still thinks he's a UFC fighter, even though he doesn't have a contract. And the UFC really doesn't seem interested in signing Czech Congo. And one of the things people forget, and this is where I don't know if the signing makes a lot of sense for Bellator, is Czech Congo's 38 years old. How much does he have left in the tank? Because, this isn't a guy that's been on a tear. This is a guy that's been getting knocked out. I mean, even if you look at one of his recent wins against Pat Barry, he was pretty much knocked out on his feet before somehow he comes back and gets to come from behind victory.
Yeah, he landed as I like to call it, a Hail Mary punch. But yeah, he was out, and I agree with you. I think he's very damaged, not with little nicks and little muscle pulls. He's getting knocked out, and when you keep suffering knockouts, that doesn't come back. Your chin goes. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that situation. For that, all the latest news, the MMA Report with Jason Floyd, Jason_Floyd. Jason, I really appreciate your time today, taking us into that conference call with Rampage Jackson.
I appreciate it. Now, Derek, I got to ask you, Canelo Alvarez, can he beat Floyd Mayweather? Got to know.
Can he beat Floyd Mayweather? Anything can happen. I was hoping that he was going to fight Floyd maybe a year from now. I was hoping Floyd would fight in September, and maybe he'd get him a year older, maybe a little slower. Canelo's good. After what I watched Floyd do to Robert Guerrero, I don't think he beats him. The catch weight's going to be interesting if Canelo can make weight and see what he balloons to. But if you're asking me right now, I give it to Floyd.
Well, I will be watching. I'll be in town that weekend, so I'll be watching it.
No doubt. We'll hook it up. We'll watch the fight together.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon, man.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks, you, Jason.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, Jason was on that call today. It was it's the buzz. It's the buzz. And like I said, this is a splash signing that we have not really seen from Bellator. King Mo was
that signing pretty much up until that point, you think?
I would think so. Yeah, I think this eclipsed King Mo.
Certainly.
Because
name-wise, recognition-wise, but drawing power. King Mo's never sold a pay-per-view. Not one. Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, the Rampage Jackson is main evented pay-per-views, and people have pulled money out of their pocket because he was on the top of the card. And I think Jason brings up a good point. This is the first guy that they could really put out there that gets that recognition. That if he's on SportsCenter, SportsCenter's not laughing you out of the building when you say, let's do something with Rampage. Interesting signing again. I just don't know where it fits in to the Bellator picture.
And you brought it up. I had been thinking that is because Jason mentioned how if Bellator is able to keep Rampage happy over X amount of time, that them being able to use that and sort of use that as the carrot they dangle in front of other fighters to come over. Now, are they going to be able to do enough to keep them, to get them early enough in their career so they're not getting them once they've used up their prime in the UFC?
Yeah.
Are they going to get the fighters while they have their best years and their best fights still in them?
And what they've done a good job, Bellator, I mean, I think UFC's done an excellent job of really, locking down some of the foreign markets. I memean, with the tough Brazil, they're really making their name known there. If you look at Bellator's roster and guys who are fighting, they're getting guys from, the Russian countries that have split up, and they have a real good pipeline there. So their approach is different. Listen, I love seeing their competition. I'm not a guy who's like, there's too much MMA on. The more the merrier. They have a different setup with a tournament. I think it'd be fun, draw up a tournament, and I want to see where they put Rampage. If they draw up a King Mo Rampage fight. I know there's no love lost there. Again, I'm interested in that. So that's going to be a fun situation to keep an eye on. Everything's hugs and kisses today. Everyone loves each other today
for the moment.
The contract's signed, but if you followed Rampage in his career, and he's a volatile guy,
let's let the ink dry first, and then reevaluate and reassess. See how happy he is.
Let's see him, show up for some of the interview stuff that he has to do for the show that follows him. Let's see him try to go through as we said, a wrestling training, a pro wrestling training camp. He might take one bump and say, this is not for me. Get me out of here. I have a fight. I'm a fighter. So no, figure out something else. So I wonder how that plays off with the boys in the back too. The wrestling locker room. We didn't even get into that. There's the MMA locker room where guys are seeing this contract, but then there's the guys busting their ass in TNA Impact Wrestling, and here comes a guy, over from MMA who's taking their spot on TV.
And probably getting paid a whole lot more.
So, yeah, hey, interesting. Always have to love the news. We were talking before, and I don't think we're done with this, was with Chael. With Chael and this Fox Sports 1 card. Do you like this fight? Are you excited about it? Does Chael sell it for you? Does the actual fight? Do you feel like it's a good matchup? What are your thoughts on it?
Any and all. I mean, I feel about Chael how Randy feels about Vanderlei. Any and all fights with Chael, I will watch. That's just the way I am. I not necessarily because I want to see him win or lose. I think he's an exciting fighter. I like how he sells the fight. So yes, that draws me in. I also feel that this is a better fight in general, just for everybody involved, as opposed to him going up against Bones and Silva. I think this is
more competitive.
It's more of a winnable fight for him. And I certainly think that it's a winnable fight for Shogun as well. So I think it's going to be more exciting. I think we'll see. I'd like to see who his hands, because I just like to see him beat the ever-loving crap out of anybody he goes up against. But he also has a bad history of gassing out. So will he be able to finish Sonnen before before he gasses out. Will Sonnen be able to take him down and try to ground and pound? How much BJJ will Hua be able to use? I just think that this fight puts a lot more, many more aspects together to make it more enjoyable to watch.
I'll tell you what I like about this fight is, and you mentioned it, it's a winnable fight for Chael. It's a where he was a long shot against John Jones.
Definitely.
I still feel like Anderson Silva, he won 4.5 rounds. I don't feel like he was completely outclassed in those fights. I'm glad he's not fighting him again. What I hope this fight does for him, because I feel like Rua's at the end of the road.
Certainly.
I feel like he's washed. You talk about his, training, his, gassing.
He's tired.
He's a tired fighter. He's a fighter who's gone through, a ton of wars, not fights, wars. Just the Dan Henderson one.
That's the one I always think about. That's one of those fights almost like Bonner Griffin. It's one of those fights that sticks with you because it's just them digging at the very, very end of their at the very bottom of the barrel with every single punch.
Yeah, both guys are dragging knuckles at the end of the fight and still throwing. Yeah, that's one of those time capsule fights. And we were talking about if, last week, Hall of Fame. Does Bonner, just go ahead and put that fight in the Hall of Fame. Go ahead and do that. I'm the same way with Shogun and Henderson. That being said, I feel like Shogun's done. I do. I know.
So you don't give him a shot?
No. I think Chael wins this fight. But what I was saying is what I like about it, not only is it winnable, I hope it puts to rest people's, the view of Chael. I didn't like the fact that after the Bones-Jones fight, people were asking about retirement because I don't feel like he's there. He's not losing to B-level fighters. As you pointed out, he lost to Anderson Silva twice. He lost to John Bones-Jones. That's the elite of the elite. Let's not take him out to pasture yet. This isn't Chuck Liddell getting knocked out by Rich Franklin. Okay, he's losing to guys who are at the absolute top of the game. So I feel like this performance will get him back in the swing of things, to tell you the truth. I know he wants to fight for championships, and he may get that shot again. But now you have this fight. You get this Rua fight. He's calling out the axe murderer. So there's already two more fights lined up for him. And to me, the more Chael, the better. I'm with you. I'm watching him. I know he's going to seamlessly transfer into the mic and behind the desk and all those things that he's currently doing. But I still want to see him fight a couple more times.
He's still got some left in the tank.
Because I feel like those last couple outings have really kind of tarnished what people think of him. I feel like people think he's just a mouth. That he just runs his mouth, he goes in there, he loses. Okay, he's going to sell. No, he's a tough son of a bitch who will grind out wins. It just so happened that he was fighting two of the best in the world. So hopefully this can kind of, build him up in the MMA's world and to the respect that I feel like he deserves. This is a guy who ran through Brian Stann. Just ran through him, looked great. He's won a lot of fights, and I feel like, the back elbow slips and he gets laid out against Anderson. He fights John Jones, who is unbelievable, and now people think he's a one-trick pony, and that trick is his mouth. So hopefully, he'll get back on track. The lead up to that fight is going to be ridiculous. You're going to see him everywhere, like I said, and he's going to eat it up. It's so funny. I heard him on. I went back and listened to an old podcast of the Stone Cold Steve Austin show. See, Stone Cold does a podcast.
I didn't even know he did a podcast.
Yeah, he does a podcast, which if you're a wrestling fan, it's like it's can't miss. It's the best thing going.
All right.
So he had Chael on though, and Chael talked about how even before the Stan fight and stuff, he called Stone Cold to talk about promos and things, how to get to a place with a guy, because he respected Stan so much. Like, how do you cut a promo on a guy who you really like? And I just thought that was pretty funny that, with all the mics and attention he's going to get, he's going to be loaded up. But this weekend we have a card too. And I think this gets overlooked a lot, that has, a real significance in the heavyweight picture with Big Nog and Verdum. And that's on UFC on Fuel TV. What number is this? 10? I don't know. I lose count.
27,000.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll be so happy when we go away from the numbers. I was so upset when they said it's going to be Fox Sports 1. You know, do we need the number cards?
Well, I mean,
do we really need to do that?
It's Fox Sports 1, and then there's Fox Sports 1, 2. Fox Sports 1, 3. So it's going to continue. Don't you worry.
Yeah, I could do without it, but we have Big Nog in Verdum this weekend.
Yeah, I like this fight. Although I personally have not seen much of Verdum. Really, the only fight that I remember seeing is actually the Nelson fight.
We bloodied up Big Roy.
Yeah, and right off the bat, he gained a lot of my respect. I thought that was a very impressive performance that he was able to. I mean, it's not that hard to hit Roy Nelson. It's not like he's a hard target to hit, but I mean, he took his shots as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. How does this fight look to you? Who do you think is coming out on top, considering?
Well, I think it's set up
where they are in their careers.
Yeah,
too.
exactly, and that's a big thing. I feel like this is set up for Verdum. I feel like Verdum wins, he gets the next title shot
right off the bat.
Well, after the trilogy fight, I think that puts him in line. You know, Big Nog is another one of these guys. At some point, right? You got to be done. You know, and he
been around a long time.
And you know, and what Big Nog is one of these guys who, you know, he looks like he's 57 years old. He's still a pretty young guy. He's just been through so many damn wars, and I just feel like this is set up for Doom's kind of coming out party. What's going to be interesting is this is in Brazil, if I'm not mistaken. This is
this is the
their
tough
ultimate
Brazil finale.
Yeah, so what's going to be, you know, what they usually do is line up, you know, Brazilian versus the visiting team, and the place is going nuts for just one guy. Now it's, you know, it's two locals going at it in front of the local crowd. That place is going to be hype. That's going to be a fun fight to watch. I like Verdum in this. Like I said, I think Nog's a little long in the tooth, and this is
Nog's 37, by the way. Verdum is 35.
Okay, 37 looks 52
every day of it.
And he's going to probably fight like he's about 45, 46. So I got Verdum in this one, but you know, when we come back from the break, and I know I don't want to jump into it before the break, but bring up Roy Nelson to me.
Okay.
All right, that's your job for after the break, is to bring up Roy Nelson to me, because he had a lot of interesting comments, and I think it ties in with this Verdum fight and just kind of the heavyweight picture as is. We talked about before Jason came on, BJ Penn.
Yes, speaking of washed up,
reports coming out that he's training. He's going to be testing his body, see where he is mentally for. I mean, is it a comeback? Is it another fight?
Don't call it a comeback.
I mean, we've been around with this before. Do you have any interest whatsoever?
Zero, and I have had pretty much zero interest in what he's been doing for a while. I don't think he's ever really lived. Well, okay, no, that's unfair, because he is a multi-division champ. So I can't say he never lived up to the hype. So
it's tough, right? It's tough to say that, because you're right. He's been a champion, but has he reached that level of what people thought?
It doesn't seem like it at all, because everybody has really believed in his nickname of the Prodigy, and I never really felt it. I never believed it. He never looked like it. I don't feel he really fought like it. He did win the belts, but I never really saw what it was that everybody was hanging on to.
It was like there's flashes. There were flashes. There were certain fights where it's like, oh shit, that's what everyone was talking about. That's BJ Penn. That's the Prodigy. That's the guy that brought all the hype. And then the next time out, he'd go flat. And he'd put one or two of those together where he'd just go flat. Now, some people talk about, not really finding a home in a weight division.
Yeah, he bounced around. He was everywhere.
And I'll give a little credence to that, but there's only at a certain point, if you're pointing and saying that's why he, maybe didn't live up to the potential. At what point do you pick your home and you stick with it?
And especially since that is, you're trying to find your home. You're trying to figure out what's going to be best for you. But in the middle of all this happening, this is taking a lot of stress on the body.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you are, he's 34. He's been around the game for a while. His overall record, 16-9-2. So not the longest, but that's an okay career. You put all this together, and also the fact that in between his last two fights, it was over a year. They were both very, very poor showings on his part. And what is he going to bring back to it? How is he going to be sufficiently testing himself, be it at lightweight, be it wherever? I think he's, right now they're saying lightweight.
He was...
everything's going against him right now.
He was completely outclassed against Rory McDonald.
Certainly. Nobody thought that he performed like he needs to stay in the UFC.
But he's talking about, before that fight, how focused he was, how physically ready he was. You didn't hear about any injuries coming into camp. You didn't hear that he was sick. There were no excuses. He said he was, he wasn't going against a guy who was unknown that he couldn't get excited for. There was some bad blood cooking. He had everything going on. He's slapping his head coming in. I remember, just him coming to the ring. Everyone was like, oh, shit, here's BJ Penn. We got him. Here he is. And he goes out there and just lays an egg. And give credit to Rory for he's an excellent fighter. But at the same point, BJ did nothing that fight. And I don't see where he draws like, okay, I'll go to lightweight and win. And where do you put him on the card?
What I mean? Is he a main event card guy?
You kind of have to, I guess. But would you be? Facebook.
But again,
is he jerking the curtain on Facebook?
But again, it comes down to him trading on his name. Yeah, people know him. That's why they would be tuning in. So you'd be forced to put him on a main event, even if it's just a free TV card, a fuel TV card, even.
Right.
But you'd have to put him up there. But I don't even think that he has that ability anymore. And he doesn't garnish that sort of level.
And I think where I'm interested to see where this goes is, Dana's been pretty vocal about he'd love to see BJ retire. Here's the things that stack up against him. All right, Dana's saying he wants him to retire. BJ, before the Rory McDonald fight, was talking about like how this was like his last run. This was the best camp. You hear all the bullshit. It was almost like he was looking back. It was like he was talking himself into it. So he gets destroyed by Roy. Destroyed, toyed with, absolutely toyed with. McDonald's throwing punching combos with his hands down. He's hitting him with the ollie shuffle in the ring, and BJ is
no answer.
No, he's getting swolled up is what he's doing. His face is swelling while Rory's doing a dance. He comes out and he says that he hasn't been the same fighter since his daughter's been born. I saw that quote in an interview. The edge is gone. The edge is gone, and
you have to have the killer instinct.
It's not a bad thing. It's just not what you need in this sport, and to compete at the level you are. People grow up. People's they grow up mentally. They grow up physically. They move on from certain things that are important to them that were important to them in their 20s. From teens, 20s to he's in his 30s now. Priorities shift. That's part of life. I get that, but we talk about it on this show. Once you think about retiring, you got to go.
Yeah, once that R word pops up.
Once the R word comes up, it's time to go. So I want to hear from you out there on Radio IO, MMA Weekly, Knockout Radio, however you're hearing, listening to us. After the break, we're going to talk a little about Roy Nelson. I want to hear from you about BJ Penn. I want to hear from you about what you think about this Rampage deal. Is he out of his mind? Do you like it? Are you going to watch Rampage and TNA and Bellator and all that? 855-483-6646. We'll be back with hour number 2 right after this. We are back, hour number 2. Knockout Radio, 855-483-6646 if you want to give us a call. Frank, what was that music during the break? Who was that?
That was Down. That was Lifer is the name of the track.
That was brutal, man. I felt like I was at like a Tuesday afternoon at some seedy strip club.
Man, didn't like it, huh?
No, not my speed. But hey,
all right, sorry, going off the playlist.
That's I don't have a playlist, but probably whatever you're going to play, I'd probably make fun of. But
I want to hear what the listeners out there what they want to hear. I'm curious as to what they want to hear. So
they probably want to hear more of that, like our like the Open, that twangy. What was that? That was that terrible. So what'd you call that last week? You like that thing, Frank? Right?
I love that. I love the banjo deal in the opening.
Yeah, wait. What would you classify that as? Is it like country?
I mean, I would kind of maybe like a honky tonk type of deal.
So bad.
You're a wrestling fan. You don't like the honky tonk?
You know what? I have all my teeth. I like wrestling. It's crazy. I know it doesn't make sense. I
put
like together
paradox.
Sentences. I know. I don't have a lipper. I don't know how it lined up, but hey, Frank, thanks for running the board today. We appreciate your work.
It's my pleasure, man. I enjoy the show.
I think we should have listeners either tweet in. They should tweet Frank. They should tweet us, and they can give their suggestions. Let's mix it up. Let's try something like that.
Yeah, definitely. We're always open to take some requests for the break music.
There we go.
Appreciate that.
How about
Frank.
that?
855-483-6646. Knockout Radio, hour number 2. In hour number 1, we talked to Jason Floyd with the MMA Report about
great interview.
Great,
that was
awesome. Thank you.
I think that went
I think
well.
you did okay on it too.
I try.
Yeah, okay. There's room to improve.
Oh well, absolutely.
Always.
Absolutely. I try. I'm still new to this. Wet behind the ears.
But we where?
What? Huh?
They talked about the Rampage Jackson signing with Bellator that's been making news. We were talking about BJ Penn before the break. Is there a fight? All right, BJ says I'm coming back. Is there someone you want to see him in there with?
Nope.
I mean, nobody?
Nope. I don't want to see BJ Penn.
Period.
No.
Gray Maynard?
Nope.
Nothing.
Gray Maynard would destroy BJ Penn.
Would he?
I definitely think so.
Line it up. He needs a win, right?
Well, yeah, after TJ Grant whooped him and got his fight with Benderson.
With Benderson?
With Benderson at 164 for the title.
In Milwaukee. The good land. Yeah. No, we talk about that, about BJ Penn. Do you want to see him back? Do you want to see him go away? Wegs and I are definitely on the same page on this one, but he's got a lot of fans out there. He has a lot of loyal fans out there who,
known as the state of Hawaii.
Yeah. No, they all live out there on the big island, which is unbelievable to me as is. Like how you could be a fighter in that beautiful place. Like your mind, how do you flip a switch to be a fighter? There's too much good things going on out there. But do you want to see BJ Penn fight? Do you want to see him hang it up? 855-483-6646. I want your take on the Quinton Rampage Jackson signing as well. This weekend, we talked about we have Big Nog fighting Verdum. It has some, I think it'll have some title implications. Now, the guy who's been, we've been talking about for a couple weeks, as far as, is he going to get a title shot? When is he going to get a title shot? And is fighting he's fighting in an upcoming card. Big Country, Roy Nelson. He's been on a roll. They have him ranked at number 5 in the division. His fight's coming up against, pronounce it for me, Miocic. I should know him being a fellow Croat, like myself.
What? Really?
Oh, yeah. You think I get this big nose just out of nowhere? Yeah, that's straight Croatian, buddy. That's That's right out of the motherland.
Interesting.
Yeah, they grow them. They grow the nose large over there. So
interesting.
But some interesting comments were revealed at Kevin Ioli from Yahoo.com. He wrote a pretty interesting article I read today talking about the relationship between Dana and Big Country. And I thought it was interesting because, you know, it kind of ties into what was said during the Rampage fight. Mm-hmm. Or during the Rampage conference call today.
Right.
You know, how he kind of lost his love for MMA or whatever, and how his relationship with Dana went sour, and he felt like that really kind of took away, you know, what he could do. You know, I find it funny when you hear him talk, and you hear some of these other guys kind of come out, and I'm 99% of the time pro Dana. You know, I like how he runs his business. I appreciate what they've done MMA style. But I had some issues with some of his quotes talking about Roy Nelson. It was brought up, is Roy just trying to be anti-establishment? Is he kind of building on, you know, what Tito Ortiz did? You know, Tito kind of made a name for himself. You know, him and Dana were going head to head for a while. And some people thought that was just Tito, you know, trying to be, you know, building his brand and his character kind of, you know, against the man. And the quote from Dana said, and I quote, is, "He's not doing that," meaning Tito's gig. "It's nothing he's thought about, and it's he's intentionally trying or anything he's intentionally trying to do. He's not that smart. Let's be honest. He's just not a smart guy." He goes on to say, "He thinks he's funny, but to me, he's an idiot." This is Dana talking about Roy Nelson. Which I understand that Dana's an outspoken guy, but this is a guy you have under contract. You know, this is
the moment.
For the moment, you know, this is a guy who, you know, he's promoting. This is a guy he's putting on his cards. He goes on to say, when they bring up about getting a title shot, and Dana says this, he says, "Roy loves to say I'll never give him a title shot, but dude, beat somebody, then I'll give you a shot." Now, whose job is that to give Roy Nelson somebody to beat?
Yeah, they're the ones that are making the fights. It's not in Nelson's hands.
And then he goes on to say, Roy's knocking off these guys ranked 6 through 10, but when he gets to fighting the top 5 guys, he can't do the same thing. You're not going to get a title shot beating number 6 and number 8. You have to beat the top guys. Okay.
He has to fight the top guys.
That's one point. And Kevin Ioli goes on to point out that Nelson, you know, is is currently ranked 5th, but he's 0-3 when fighting fighters in the top 10. He lost to Dos Santos.
Yep.
He lost to...
That was in August 7th, 2010.
He lost to Verdum.
Which was February 4th of 2012. And his last loss.
And he lost to Frank Mir,
who is May 28th, 2011.
And I believe at the time, I think these are rankings at the time, Muir was ranked 7. I don't know where Frank is still. Nelson comes back to point out that, you know, he had a serious knee injury when he fought Dos Santos. He had that huge cut against Verdum and had pneumonia when he faced Muir. Okay, everyone's injured. Everyone has, you know, excuses.
Pneumonia's kind of a big deal.
Pneumonia's kind of a big deal. But this was kind of the sealer for me. And I'm usually pro Dana, but this is kind of where I you know, be consistent. This is Dana's quote. But he, meaning Roy, he's not going to get a title shot just by talking about it and doing whatever the hell he's trying to do. So he's not going to. Number one, Dana says he needs to beat somebody. Then they'll talk about a title shot, which Roy doesn't have control over who they put him in and who they're giving in fights to. Also, he's not going to talk his way into one.
Chael,
right? I mean, didn't this just happen? That with the Chael and the John Jones fight?
Yeah. That's very true. I mean,
who did? And I loved it. You know, the matchup, and I know Chael, you know, stepped up. But who did Chael beat to get a title shot for John Jones?
Nobody. Well, and that's the thing. He didn't even have a fight.
He didn't have a fight in that weight division.
Yeah.
He was coming off a loss. Don't say you can't talk.
A very decisive loss. I mean, it's not like it was a close fight decision either.
Yeah. So, I read some of these comments, and I'm not a huge Roy Nelson fan. When he fights, I'm watching. I appreciate that. The way he comes off. We interviewed him, I believe, a couple times. He's kind of a dry, smart-ass guy. I get it. It's not my cup of tea. There's certain times you kind of want a straight answer from a guy, and I understand where it rubs Dana the wrong way, and I get that. But at the same point, and at the same time, he is a fighter. He's one of your fighters. And you say he has one fight left on his contract.
It's coming up to the end. So, how much longer is he going to be around? He's won his last 3, so it's not like he's hit a skid and he's not drawing people.
The positioning of this is interesting to me. Is Dana coming out now kind of more vocal towards Roy because it is his last fight and he's trying to bury him a little to bring him, maybe bring him back at a lower cost? I don't understand why you call out a fighter like that who is currently under contract with you. I mean, he's had, he's worked with Nate and Nick Diaz. He's worked with guys who he hasn't liked, but I don't remember him ever really coming out strong when they weren't under contract, or when they were under contract, when they do have a fight coming up, when they are on a 3-fight win streak. It seemed odd. In hearing this, I'm starting to see Roy's side of why he's maybe letting his contract play out. You think a guy like Roy is looking at what Quinton Rampage Jackson just signed, and he says, well, you know what? Maybe I don't need this shit.
You think there's a chance he goes to Bellator or even World Series of Fighting when he is at this stage in his career? His ability, I should say.
Let me bring up Roy's quote in this story. Again, this is Kevin Ioli's story. I always like to give credit for when credit's due on people who did the work. Kevin Ioli with Yahoo Sports, really good article on Dana and Roy Nelson's relationship. So this is Roy Nelson. This is what Roy has to say. In this business, as an athlete, you're a commodity. If you're a bartender, you can't say certain things because there are a lot of bartenders out there, and you could be replaced. It's not hard to replace a bartender. If there was another Roy Nelson, okay, but there's not, and so it's harder to replace the athlete. We're not a dime a dozen. We're very few people can do what we can do. Very few.
Wow.
So it's obvious in Roy's mind. His value is for himself is out the roof.
He feels like he's in the driver's seat.
The first part of that quote is when you work for yourself, the whole point of working for yourself is that you're the boss. Some people don't understand the sports business. He feels like you can't replace a Roy Nelson.
I'm guessing that Dana probably feels the opposite, especially considering we've and for months we've been talking about, oh well, UFC said they need to cut 100 guys, this, that, the other thing, blah blah blah. They have too many people in their stable, and basically, yeah, these two very strong personalities are at opposite ends of the spectrum right now. And when it's all said and done, who's going to come out on top? I think they both are, because Dana is going to get what he wants. He's either going to sign Roy to another contract.
Well, the machine's going to keep rolling.
It's going to happen. There's going to be no skin off his ass, and if that's the case, then Nelson can take his wares somewhere else. And he's at a point in his career where I think he has the ability. Still, he's not a quote unquote washed up fighter. He still has a lot left in the tank to give to a Bellator, to a World Series of Fighting even, but probably more so Bellator because it's a bigger name promotion. He wants to be able to make some more. They have the support of Viacom.
And that's kind of what, whose side of this do you stand on? And I'll open it up, 855-483-6646, because I understand where Roy's coming from. I do. There aren't. He's right. I mean, there aren't loads of people willing to do what he does and can do it that well. That being said, is he overvaluing himself? Which I think he is, because that's why I'm dying to know that Quinton Rampage. I'd love to see the numbers on that deal.
How much he got? Yeah.
How much he got? With the UFC getting so big and doing the things that they're doing, and I can't stress it enough. I love the way they do business, especially as a boxing fan. I look at it, I say they're doing it right, and go ahead and give me all the fighter pay complaints and all that stuff, whatever. They're doing business, I feel like, in a good way. But when you get big like this, and as you're getting bigger, we're starting to see, those cracks, those people who kind of feel, maybe screw the UFC, we're going to go and help another company build, which is great for competition. It really is. I mean, King Mo, like you touched on earlier, went to Bellator. This Rampage Jackson signing is, a big deal right now. Everyone's talking about it. He's in Bellator.
Nick Diaz starting his own promotion.
That's exactly where I was going. Diaz has gone and started his own promotion.
I mean, that's to the far extreme, but exactly.
But he's saying that there's another outlet. That he's saying, I don't need the Zuffa banner. And Roy's going to be the next guy. It'll be interesting to see where he goes after this fight.
And talking about his value, I mean, I think as accurate as you can get, an accurate gauge of that are the rankings, really, because they're not done by the UFC. They're done by the media. Mm-hmm. And obviously the fighters don't have any input. So if you look at the heavyweight rankings as they are, obviously Kane is the champ, JDS, Cormier is 2, Verdum is 3, who Nelson already lost to. Mm-hmm. That was his last loss. Number 4 is Bigfoot. 6 is Overeem. So Nelson being 5, he has moved up 1. He and Overeem flip-flopped.
Right.
So that's
and Overeem has a fight coming up.
Yeah, they both have a fight coming up. So I don't know. Nelson wants to fight somebody who's going to obviously put him in a better position to get that title shot. Dana has to sit here and say, okay, well, no, actually, he doesn't have to. But if he's going to try to give him somebody in the top 4 since he's saying that Nelson has to fight somebody and beat somebody to deserve that title shot, who does he fight? Silva?
But and that's a great point, because think about this: when after Daniel Cormier won, he beat Muir. Everyone was talking about Nelson Cormier, mm-hmm. But Nelson jumped right in and took this fight. The guys above him are all tied up.
Yeah, JDS, Cormier. He's gonna have, well, as of right now, he doesn't have another fight set up, but he wants another heavyweight fight, because he's making noise that he actually does want to make that drop to 205, and by the end of the year. So he's going to be looking for somebody. But
I mean, is this for Big Country? I mean, is it just unfortunate timing?
I think it has a lot to do with it.
I find that comment that Dana said that beat someone and we'll give you a shot.
Well, the last fight on his contract is against somebody who's not even in the top 10.
But give him somebody. And we talk about this. All you can do is fight the guy they give you. That's all you can do. And that always drives me nuts. Who'd they beat? They did what they're supposed to. In front of whoever was in front of them, they did it. And Roy's been doing it, guns blazing, knocking guys out. He's not squeaking out wins. He's knocking guys out. I find it funny that there is this back and forth, and pretty much I feel like disrespect coming from Dana to Big Country, and you hear that Big Country is a pain in the butt to deal with, and as Dana said, he's the smartest guy in the world, but I do wonder how much. I wonder how much Big Country does it just on purpose at this point, where he feels like I'm not gonna get the rub for a title shot. So at this point I'm gonna screw with Dana. Go ahead and give me these guys in the bottom half, not even in top 10. I'll knock them out, and then I'll take my talents elsewhere and be happy and not have to deal with this.
Do you think Roy Nelson is improving his fan base, doing what he's doing now, so he takes his fans with him, basically?
Yeah, I think he is.
Because Tito,
do you mean like the antics, the quote unquote anti-establishment, his feud? Do you think that is improving his? You think that's building his fan base,
his marketability? Yeah, because when Tito was doing this,
I think knocking guys out does it. He's the fat guy who knocks guys out.
It certainly helps. But when Tito was doing the antics part of things, you loved watching him. It was either you were watching him to win or you were watching him to lose.
Mm-hmm.
So he had that marketability. So and I only bring him up because the comparison that was made earlier.
Yeah. Not because Randy texted you and said, "Hey, make sure you mention Tito today."
Tito.
Right.
By the way, Tito's vodka today was made the exclusive vodka of United Airlines.
Is that right?
So you know, yeah.
Not Tito Ortiz's vodka. Just Tito's vodka. You're a fan.
I saw it on.
You give the big thumbs up to Tito's vodka?
Sure. Yeah.
You don't know.
I've never had it before in my life.
Nah, look at you.
Whatever. I saw it on TV. Whatever.
You were saying.
As I was saying, I don't see it. I agree with Dana. I don't see the comparison being close enough to say that what Roy is doing is really doing any good when it comes to people that are tuning in to watch him fight.
And I don't think the difference for me is I don't think Roy's chasing it as much as Tito did. Tito was out there at anything he could, to fuel the feud. And I mean, they signed that contract to do a stupid fight, him and Dana. And Tito did it to build himself. And that was what he was doing was, I feel like this only comes up with Roy, when people approach him about it. When he's at the UFC events, when he's at, he's not on Twitter between fights, going off on stuff and trying to stir shit up. I feel like he'll give you his honest / smart ass opinion, at the press conferences, but he's not really chasing it. I also think the landscape is a lot different from when Tito was doing it versus now.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Let me explain. When Tito was doing it and talking about, leaving or whatever, there wasn't a viable number two. Maybe you could say Affliction was interested.
Yeah.
But there wasn't an established number two, or you could say number three World Series of Fighting. There weren't the options that there are now, and I don't think you're going to get anywhere near, UFC money. I think that's obviously the big dog, but I do think there are other places where he can apply his craft on television, can get his sponsors, can get paid pretty good money. And so that's what I kind of find interesting now is with people maybe getting a little fed up with how Dana and UFC run it, trying to create
other opportunities.
Yeah.
I think Bellator might even be a good spot for Roy. I think he might be a little bit better of a TNA type personality.
But see, is that the thing though? I mean, now does every fighter think about this now? Does every fighter come over? And that's kind of what I asked Jason. Like, when does it become gimmicky? When is it like, no, I'm just fighting?
And I think it's when it comes down to the money they want to make that will dictate it. Well, if you want that sort of money, then we're going to have to get more from you, and that's going to include appearances on TNA.
We're going to have to put you to work.
Yeah.
We're going to have to put you out there on the stroke.
Yeah, so as you said, they're not going to be getting the same type of money from another organization when they've been used to getting whatever they get for their UFC appearances, and especially a guy like Nelson, who has been plenty of main cards. He's been the main event on cards before, so he has gotten the big buck.
But I'll ask you this: is he a commodity?
I think he's a little bit more replaceable than he feels he is.
Okay,
I think he is.
Because I look at that division, and to me, this division is stacked right now.
Certainly, yeah.
I mean, they announced the, Brendan Schaub, Mitrione fight. And I know Roy knocked out Mitrione. I think he knocked out Schaub too. He's knocked out both those guys. The Ultimate Fighter finale, if I'm correct. And
was Brendan Schaub, yeah.
Yeah, and then he just knocked out Mitrione. But those are a couple young guys still in the division who could make some noise. You listed off the top 5. You listed off Cormier. Muir just signed to fight Josh Barnett, which is an interesting fight. There are names out there where I just think Roy's maybe pricing himself a little too high, and that's all part of negotiation. Obviously, he's not going to say, "Well, I'm replaceable." But I just found those comments funny in that back and forth between Dana and Roy. And this is a guy that in Roy Nelson, he went through the grind to get where he is. He was fighting in I'm trying to think the bullshit league that was going on for a while.
The IFL. That one?
The IFL, I believe. Yeah, I believe Roy was their heavyweight champion. That folds up. That closes up shop. He gets a Zuffa contract, and they gave him the Kimbo Slice deal. Well, go in the house and fight your way through tournament style. If you want to, go back to Bellator, fight your way onto the main card.
And he did.
In
knockout of the night fashion.
And that's what I would just be I'm surprised at where this relationship is. You would think a guy like that would really get, be a guy that Dana and everyone would get behind. I think he's building his fan base, but I don't think he's building it through, as you suggest,
through the gimmicks.
Through the gimmick, yeah. He's the only gimmick that he has. He's the guy who doesn't look like he lifted a weight in his life. He looks like, Joe Trucker that just has an absolute unbelievable right hand, and he has some other skills too. He just hasn't been able to showcase them.
Yeah, he's nine fights in the UFC, 6-3. 4 of his 6 wins have been knockout of the night, and then his last loss, the loss to Verdum, was fight of the night.
Right. So he produces. As we were talking to compare him to Rampage, who says he always wants to put on a good show. Compared to fight of the nights, knockouts of the nights, and it's a whole different story. And I'll never forget that fight against Dos Santos, where Dos Santos was hitting him with
everything he had
at all angles, and somehow Roy was stumbling around, but he was still fighting tougher than a $2 steak. So I hope he sticks around. My rap on this is I hope he sticks around because I feel like there's a lot of good fights that you could put him in.
He's not a washed up fighter.
No, not at this point. Left. I think, yeah, and he's dangerous, and he's willing to, throw that right hand. He's taken one to give one. So it's I want to see what happens with this one.
And we have Pete on line 1. Pete, how you doing, man?
Up, boys?
You know what? I was going to bring you up because we were talking about this Fox Sports 1 card, and I saw your tweet. It's happening in Boston right now, the card. And as you said, nobody cares because it's hockey season.
Absolutely. Come on, the Bruins are playing tonight, man. Like, it's what it's all about. I was talking to Jason Floyd earlier today, and I said to him, I'm like, no one cares right now. I mean, if the Bruins get knocked out to this next round, everybody's going to be back on the UFC bandwagon up here. But right now, it's Bruins country right now.
So do you think Dana, as a Boston guy, is cheering for them to get eliminated?
You know what? I think so, because they moved the ticket on sale date.
Did they? They moved it back?
Yeah, it was supposed to be this week. They moved it to next week, and I think it's because if they get, you know how it is. It's expensive. They're expensive seats, so it's like, Eastern Conference Finals tickets / possible Stanley Cup versus UFC. I don't know, man. It's tough.
So, Pete, while I have you on right now, and you can always get Pete, he's always talking on Twitter at Longhorn MMA. Now, if it comes to it, which I hope so, Bruins Blackhawks, what are we putting on it?
Oh, that's a tough one. We might have to do a show swap.
All right, well we'll have to work out something. Well, like I said, hopefully it gets to that point. My boys took a bump last night in LA, but they'll be back. They'll be back.
Yeah, no jinxing either. There's still plenty of games left in the Bruins-Penguins series, too, even though Sidney Crosby keeps crying like a little baby, but okay.
So, Pete, let me run down a couple things we were talking about. I always love your take. BJ Penn, do you want to see him fight again?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No. I was saying to somebody on Twitter today, I'm like, the guy should just go to the beach, get his drink, just chill out, relax, go into retirement, enjoy it. Or better yet, maybe he should be the guy running his own Twitter account and not that other guy. Remember that random guy who runs his Twitter account.
You mean you don't have a guy to run your Twitter account?
Me? No, it's all me, brother. All me.
That's all you? It's all you. See, I gotta find a guy. I just hand him my phone and just kind of dictate
what about Wegsy? Why can't he do it?
Wegs runs. He runs his own. He runs his own business. And plus he'd probably beat me up if I asked him. So, I gotta find some underling to do my Twitter account.
I got too much shit to be doing, man.
And along the same lines, what we opened the show with, and I know that you and I I've been lucky enough to be on your podcast, and we've bullshitted about WrestleMania and wrestling. This Rampage Jackson deal, with TNA, with Bellator. Give me your thoughts on what you think of this deal.
I love it. I really do. I said to somebody the other day, we were kind of joking about the stanky leg video, the Rashad Evans, Quinton Rampage Jackson, when that was on the Tough Show when he was like pretending he was Rashad. I mean, come on. Rampage is a character. He's a guy who can sell himself. He's done movies. He's been everywhere. He's been in Pride. I mean, listen, if you're going to watch this or look at this and sit and be like, oh, he's going to go and win some Bellator title, you're crazy. I mean, he's doing this for money. He's doing this to get his name out there. He's doing this to build the brand. King Mo is doing the same exact thing. And look at King Mo. Goes to Bellator, gets knocked out. And people are still talking about him. People are still excited about him. And there's all kinds of stuff. He's an OVW, and people are watching, and they're following that type of stuff. I mean, I really like this deal. I know not every MMA fan is going to like this particular deal, but I think these hybrid fighters, I think you're going to see more of this. I mean, look at CM Punk. CM Punk's been teasing forever. I mean, Vince McMahon even allows him to come out with a Gracie sweatshirt on to some of the events. So you're going to start seeing more of this. Vince wanted this a long time ago. Dixie Carter has now obviously started this gimmick, and I think you're going to see a lot more of this. And if you don't like wrestling, I'm sorry, but it's going to get thrown down your throat.
Now, I'm a fan, obviously, as you know, but like you're talking about Rampage, like he's Rampage of, I'll say, 8 years ago. This. When was the last time that Rampage is, as an MMA fan, is you paid for a pay-per-view? When was the last time he performed where you were like, that was worth my money, and you didn't walk away disappointed?
Well, I could look at it like this and flip this on you and say, I've watched Ben Henderson just keep fighting decisions, and George St. Pierre just keep fighting decisions. I mean, obviously these are all different guys, and Rampage hasn't necessarily been the best. But, I mean, how many guys out there do you always have to see, and do you always want to see because they're always going to give you the same thing? There's only a handful of guys who are going to be like that. The John Jones and the Vitor Belforts and those types of guys. Those are the ones who are always going to show up for you the way that you expect them to show up. Rampage, sure. We might not necessarily expect him to do what he did 5 years ago or 6 years ago or 7 years ago, but we also don't know what he's going to bring to the table yet with all these other ancillary things, because I think what you're going to start seeing here is you're going to start seeing TNA build some storylines where they kind of cross the lines, and those are the things that are going to engage fans, and it's not always going to be about what's the actual fight and what's the outcome of the fight, but it's getting people to tune in and getting people interested in the product and buying the T-shirts and doing all this other stuff and building other guys too. I mean, I look at this kind of like there's an opportunity here for Rampage not only to make some money and get Bellator's name and TNA's out there more, but also drive the Emmanuel Newtons of the world and get these guys up and get people respecting them and, in some ways, jobbing out to them.
So you think eventually we're going to see a Bellator event being held, and then all of a sudden we have somebody running down towards the cage with a chair?
I said this to Jason Floyd a bunch of times. He thinks I'm crazy. I guarantee you that at some point, Bellator and Impact is going to do a show that is combined. It's coming. It makes the most sense. I mean, obviously Impact doesn't have a soundstage anymore, but Bellator is headquartered out of California, right? I mean, they could easily grab soundstage there. They could do shows like this. It could be half the price of probably what they're doing now for production. And don't be surprised. I mean, obviously, that's not what most hardcore MMA fans want to hear, but this is a money business, guys. These Bellator and Viacom, they're not the UFC. They're two totally different things. I look at one as being completely a sport and trying to build a sport, and I look at the other one as being, there's a lot of possibilities here for them to just try to make money.
No, I trust me. I understand that it's a money business, and you said that it might, draw fans in. But on the flip side of that, couldn't it turn both fans off if you're a diehard wrestling fan, if you're a diehard MMA fan?
Yes.
Couldn't it turn, just both completely off to what's going on?
Of course, there's always going to be that. I mean, it was like WWE, WCW back in the day. I mean, there was a lot of people that were fans of both, but there was just as many fans who were like, I'm not watching WWF, I'm not watching WCW, whatever. And to a point, it's already kind of happening on Twitter. Just go look. Look at all the UFC lovers out there that UFC can never do any wrong. And then you have all these Bellator fans out here that are also kind of like, screw the UFC, and then always defending the UFC and stuff. I mean, the splintering, if you will, already has kind of happened.
Which is crazy, and it is. I mean, it's still such a small demographic to be splintering, like you said, is nuts. But so now if you look at that, if you're looking at one versus the other, does Bellator come off in that scope? Does Bellator come off as low rent because they are partnering up with pro wrestling?
I think so. I think so a little bit. I mean, I think you can argue that they're kind of reaching a little bit here, especially with the Rampage signing. I mean, if they go out and sign Roy Nelson, which I truly believe they're going to, regardless of whether or not he wins in a few weeks, and I think they'll probably sign Czech Congo, maybe one or two other bigger UFC guys. But I think it's going to be. It's tough to defend that. You know what I mean? It's definitely once you kind of go to that well once, and now they've been to the well twice. I mean, look at what Bjorn said. We don't want to sign all these UFC cast-offs, and what does he do? He starts signing UFC cast-offs. I mean, I think we're figuring this out, that it's all about ratings and money.
Well, I think in Bjorn's world, he wouldn't sign UFC cast-offs, and now when you get in bed with the big boys, they say, hey, listen, we need some of these big names to draw ratings.
And don't forget, too, we're still people. It's funny. Everybody talks about Rampage this week, and it's a big deal, and then Czech Congo started getting talked about, Roy Nelson, but we keep forgetting something. Eddie Alvarez is still sitting out there in La La Land, not knowing where he's going to be. You have Paul Daly talking crap about Bellator. We don't know what he's doing. And then you got guys like Ben Askren, whose contract's going to be up fairly shortly. So as much as they're investing all this money in these known names already, there's a potential here where you got guys who are already in your promotion that you've built up. And to use a wrestling reference, the AJ Styles, the Samoa Joes, who are already kind of, you're building yourself, that they might leave. They might reach out to somebody else.
Now, and that's a great point, because when we do talk to Bjorn, and I've talked to him, we've had him in studio, he's been a big fan of growing his own guys and building that brand, and that's how, that's why he loves the tournament format. And, you're right, it's nut cutting time on a couple of the guys who really are kind of his big, you like that, Wegs? Nut cutting time? Nut cutting time with some of the guys who he's kind of built up here. And I'll ask you, Longhorn, and you have a great take on the ratings. You keep an eye on all that stuff. Bellator's ratings last year, throughout the season, did they go up? Did they go down? Did they hold steady? How did they look?
They weren't terrible. I mean, if you look at it over the course of the year, they were like 300% up compared to what they were before. But I mean, they had some peaks and valleys. They were always around the 750, 800 range. And then there was a couple of situations where, poof, we pop up to like around $1 million, we peak at $1.5 million, but they don't want to be in that range. The UFC is heading to Fox Sports 1. The channel doesn't exist right now. we don't know what those ratings are going to be. UFC and Fox want those ratings to be huge, but I'll tell you right now, if the UFC on Fox Sports 1, even with Chael Sonnen, does not do as good as, say, a UFC on FX event, let's say it hovers in the millions, just because maybe it's tough for people to find the channel, maybe not all the providers have it, Bellator wants to be able to, especially next season, which we don't even know the date they're going to be on, like the day they're going to be on, but if they can get in the 1-2 range, the 1-3 range, the 1-4 range, and that's above what Fox Sports 1 does, even with the card that's there, just because of the placement of the channel and the timing and stuff, that's huge for Bellator. That's a selling point for them. That's a selling point for them to go to advertisers and say, hey, look, we signed Rampage, we signed King Mo, we did all this. We're beating the UFC on the UFC's own channel. That's huge.
Now, do they have a date yet in time slot, being Bellator?
Not for the fall season yet. I know that
I keep seeing different rumors
on Thursday. What's that?
I keep seeing different rumors that their time's changing, which I hope it does. Bring it a little earlier in the night because I'm an old man and I need to go to bed early. And but have they set a time and date?
I know this summer we definitely got Wednesdays. Definitely going to be earlier. So for people like you and I, get up early, got jobs, stuff like that. Easier for us. But in the fall, I know that they've requested a Saturday date. They've requested a couple of Thursday dates. So, but remember, those are all subject to change. And according to the guy who was on your show earlier, Jason, I believe he said probably within the next 2 weeks we'll have the definitive time slot and date. And I know there's a rumor floating that floated this morning about Friday nights. Get that out of your head. There's absolutely no way that Bellator goes to a Friday night unless it's a pay-per-view.
Yeah, that'd be death. That's not the spot you want to be, for sure.
No, they already left that. They're never going back.
Last thing for you, you mentioned Fox Sports 1 and their ratings that they really need to do, well, or what number are you setting at that says, yes, this is a good number? What number is a great number for them?
They have to match what they get on FX. Absolutely.
Which anything is what are they pulling on FX right now?
Good. The highest FX card, I mean, you're talking, if we talk prelim pay-per-view, you're talking anywhere between 1 million and 2 million people, but it averages around 1.3. And then on an FX card, a general FX card, they get anywhere between 1.5 million and 3 million people. So it's a pretty good range. But again, it's going to be a growing process for them because it's a brand new channel. I mean, look at it this way. I live in Boston. I have Comcast cable. I still do not have Fuel TV. I've not been able to watch any Fuel content, none of the Fuel cards, none of the Fuel prelims. So if you're telling me that you're going to build a station that's going to be everywhere, I still don't have your other station. So it's hard to say.
Like you said, it's going to be a growing process. I know they're going to be throwing the kitchen sink at promotion. I don't think finding the channel is going to be an issue once they're done with it. It's going to be more who has the channel and who actually can physically get the channel.
Yep. So remember, always ask yourself this, and this was the Spike Bellator thing. What number channel is MTV2 on your TV? Or better yet, what number is Speed on your TV? I don't know where either of those channels are on my TV. I just know they're in the 200 range. I'd have to run through them.
And then you start searching. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Last thing for you, Pete. Where can we find all your stuff? You're always blogging. You're always tweeting. You're doing your thing on podcasts. Give a quick shout out to what you're doing.
Absolutely. You hit me up on Twitter, obviously at Longhorns MMA. All my stuff's out there. I write stuff for Jason's site, the MMA Report.com. I obviously have the MMA Analysis podcast, which runs every Friday on RadioInfluence.com. Which, Derek, we got to get you back on, brother. We need to talk a little WWE shop.
You know the number. Just let me know. I love BSing with you guys. You guys always have a good show. I always have fun.
Absolutely, and eventually I got to get Wegsy on too, so we can argue the paleo diet.
Yeah, we need to argue a paleo diet. You still have to tell me about your attempt to stand up to Zdeno Chara, by the way.
Oh, you mean the time I was in the restaurant and he was standing in front of me with like 5 of the other guys from the Bruins, and I didn't know who he was, and that was my restaurant, and I was mad that he was in my line, kind of like the Chael Sonnen thing. And I pushed him out of the way because he was in my area of the line, and the next thing you know, it's Chara, and he's in my face, and we're having some words and stuff like that. It was pretty embarrassing. I didn't even realize it was him until the guy next to me was like, "You realize who you're fighting with right now?" And I'm like, "No, why? Who?" He's like, "That's Chara." And I'm like, "Oh my God, you're right. It is Chara. I can't believe this."
I tell you what,
he ran out to him and his boys, his posse, if you will, left, just laughing at me because I'm not 7 feet tall. But the best part of the story was I come back to the same place the next day, and sure as hell, there's a menu from the restaurant with all those guys' signatures on it, with a couple of happy faces directed at me. So go figure.
I tell you what, if the Bruins get to the Cup and then the Hawks are there, go pick a fight with him. I hope he breaks his hand over your head. Do something for my home team. So, Pete, always appreciate the call at Longhorn MMA. We'll be in touch, brother.
All right, guys. Thanks.
All right, have a good one.
Pete.
Pizza Hoot. He does. They do their thing over at Radio Influence, I believe it is, and I've talked to them about wrestling, about UFC. They're always talking about gambling. It's a good time, and I know. And you and I were talking at the break. I love having guys on who are doing their own thing, kind of like this show. I feel like it helps bridge a gap. I feel like people are real territorial in the media. So I like talking to other reporters. I like getting other takes on it because their passion about this thing is just like yours, just like mine, just like Randy's, just like Sean. So that's always fun. I know I'm getting the countdown here from Mr. Wegs. So I want to thank Jason Floyd, MMA Report. Want to thank Longhorn MMA, Pete, for coming on. Wegsy, of course. Hey, thanks to you.
Hey, we got to get this show running on time one time.
And I appreciate you doing that. I know you can always follow Wegs at KO Wegs.
Absolutely.
I believe you're doing Friday show, if I'm not mistaken.
I am. Knockoutradio.com, 1340 AM for those in the Tampa Bay area.
So we can hear hear Wegs do his thing. This weekend, we got the UFC on Fuel, 10, 11 for Doom versus Big Knock. Should be fun. So thanks for everybody listening. Radio IO, MMA Weekly, KnockoutRadio.com. However you listened, we appreciate it. We'll be back next week, full house. We'll be talking more UFC, more Bellator. Randy will be back in studio, so I'm sure he'll have stories of many a free meal. So tune in next week. Thank you for your time, and have a great one.